Hello, everyone. Welcome to another audio podcast. Uh, Audio podcast on this series, looking at this series on the LabZtorm effect v.2 and the LabZtorm critique. This is another ZtormLabostix collaboration and production with the Renal Patient Support Group, or the RPSG. This is the scientist. And today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I think is quite representative, and looking at coping and asking the question: is this the foundation of well-being? And this is work that's out of a peer review publication that's come out of the Renal Patient Support Group, or the RPSG, and it's a collaborative work where where scientists where there's a scientist perspective in line with areas around psychology, and areas around looking at coping from a research perspective. So I'm going to give an overview of this in excuse me. Um, uh, First off, reading just reading the abstract. So to begin with, excuse me, from a psychological viewpoint, coping is a route that develops in milieu of a challenging state or taxing on an individual's present resources. This is a narrative. So this work was a narrative review of the coping concept, and why it is an important but misunderstood concept as well. A comprehensive literature search was conducted in around 2011, using a variety of databases and keywords. The review was scrutinized papers through different search engines to get a definition of coping related to mental health and disease, the nervous system, psychology, endocrine, and immune systems. This review, or the review, asserts that that coping is the foundation behind well-being, and more research is required to produce a symbiotic model between psychology and physiology for coping, and efforts should collaborate different disciplines across disciplines. And this from a research perspective, the authors highlight that having that cross collaboration is viable, and it is achievable. Unequivocally, unequivocally, coping, adaptation, and mechanisms are topics to contemplate in future for further understanding. So I'm now going to just give a little bit more depth, depth in relating to the sort of underpinnings of this of this work. So for several years, there has been a proliferation in coping studies through psychological and psychosocial specialties, and lots of work in relating that has come. Lots of research retrospectively has come out from known authors in the field, where, at least where psychology exists. Psychology is, and that's by authors Folkman and Lazarus, but Folkman and Moskowitz in 2004 have highlighted some aspects around this in relating to not just coping, but aspects of relating to a little bit around quality quality of life as well. Now, to this extent, coping and stress-based research is now seeing collaborations across physiological and psychological and psychosocial fields, respectively. A few authors have worked to put tighter unions or prompt tighter unions between psychology, so study of the mind, neurology, study of the nervous system, and endocrinology, study of hormones, and immunology, study of the immune system. Now, physiology, which is in a roundabout way, physiology is a science of a functioning of living systems. Now, there's a few authors have also endeavored to put forward perspectives or understanding in exploring interactions through laboratory investigations. Authors Wong and Sternberg in around the new millennium in 2000, and Jessup in 2002, and Jessup and Harbers in 2003, and an author Redwin and team in 2003, and Jessup in 2004, and also two authors, Takeda and Okumura, in 2004. These explorations have been crucial because coping and stress research retrospectively was once seen as sort of almost two-dimensional, when actually, or really, what research now informs more now than ever, is that when coping and stress, mental health, and well-being should perhaps be viewed across three dimensions, and across different specialties. Now, I'm just gonna highlight a little bit more on some of the perspectives around this from a historical standpoint, and then I will talk a little bit about about excuse me, about the basis of this investigation. Sorry, a little bit about what sort of an overview of what this sort of peer review publication sort of highlights in its as an overview. So one of the in the beginning, or one of the beginning, or sort of underpinnings of this work was that where the authors have highlighted that one of the sort of the fathers of coping or stress related research was someone who was referred to who was known as Hans Selye, who was actually an endocrinologist, and discovered that individuals with a variety of ailments manifested many symptoms attributed to their body's efforts to respond to stresses of being ill, and in works a lot of the findings or the historical viewpoints on this has date back to the works around sort of Hans Selye in 1937. Selye identified that when stress occurred for lengthy durations, there was representative center reactions from a physiological standpoint, disturbing the hormonal system, the stomach, the thymus gland, the lymphoid tissues, the respiratory system, the cardiopulmonary, and also how white blood cells also were sort of stimulated and at times of stress, or times of where stress seemed to be sort of being propagated. And these were termed the organs of stress and coping. Hans Selye developed his general adaptation syndrome in around 1936, and robust exterior sort of impetuses, both physiological and psychological, prompt coping reactions. And so Hans Selye's sort of general adaptation syndrome has three main focuses. There's the alarm reaction, where the body detects an external stress. There's adaptation, when the body engages defensive countermeasures against the stressor. And then there's exhaustion, where the body begins to run out of defenses. So the general adaptation syndrome may be defined as the manifestation of stresses in the whole body as they develop. For example, people in the face of chronic illness, such as chronic kidney disease, for example, can be viewed as traumatic and is thus stress to the whole body. So generally speaking, those who are in chronic kidney disease or diseases or long-term conditions or health complexities to an extent where they go over time, generally they can in some contexts can be referred to as almost like autoimmune, although chronic kidney disease is not an autoimmune disease itself, but basically because of what chronic kidney disease does or entails, it implements or has this stimulus where generally every day there's an onslaught on the on physiology, because the body has to fight or at least adapt in a way that's not in some contexts that conforms to normal physiological health and well-being, at least in some contexts. Now, so the question that the authors ask in this work, and listeners, this work is available again through the Renal Patient Support Group, the RPSG. It was published in the British Journal of Mental Health Nursing. It was published in 2012, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, the whole paper out. I just want to give you a quick overview. This is a sort of an extensive literature review in itself, but I'm just going to give you some basic definitions or defines around this, and then feel free to sort of check out the works in your own time. So the question then after sort of the introductory aspects is then, what is coping? So from a psychological viewpoint, coping is the route that develops in milieu of challenging state or taxing on an individual's present on their present resources, as mentioned. Now, coping has been defined as the behavioral efforts individuals use to manage or alter stressful life challenges. Challenges are referred to as problem-focused coping problem-focused coping approaches, which comprise of problem solving, material collecting, and achievement setting. For example, following a form of healthcare or as such, for example, and that's been highlighted by Folkman in 2008. Coping originates in response to appraisal that central aims are challenged, threatened, or gone. And there's works by that date back actually all the way to around in the 1980s by Ray and team in 1982, and there's works by Keel in 2004. These evaluations are characterized by undesirable reactions, and coping can perhaps be sort of summarized as the following. So coping can be intricate but it is implemented using basic strategies. Coping vasculitides and in unity with challenges. Coping is in association with challenges. So kind of when someone is having to cope, the challenges are kind of in balance, and vice versa. If a particular task or can be challenged, then problem focused coping predominates. Coping methods range from a single platform of stressful encounters to another, and coping can act as an influential mediator of emotive consequences. So there's optimistic endings are connected with some coping approaches, negative negative results with others, and that's some sort of underpinnings from works by Lazarus in 1993 and Folkman again in 2008. So overall, this article was it sort of a sort of a literature review, an overall literature review, but in part a narrative review of the coping concept and why it is important but a misunderstood concept in line with chronic health, chronic or long-term health conditions, and also in line with practices that are focused around sort of mental health and areas around sort of psychology. And this work also aims to place perspective on coping to identify whether it is actually the foundation behind well-being by exploring different theories and models. And this work aimed to review evidence and non-evidence based papers, scrutinizing articles relating to sort of different areas of healthcare, the nervous system, psychology, endocrine, and the immune systems. And papers were actually cross-examined using a critical appraisal skills program and analyzing in lieu of a coping description as part of was part of the process. And that's the overview I'm going to give on this. It is quite of an in-depth peer review publication. There was four main themes that also came out of this work. So there's quite a lot of sort of focus and sort of depth to this work. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now. So do check it out if you get time through the Renal Patient Support Group, the RPSG. But hopefully it's been a sort of intuitive for you to for listeners to check this out. Check it around this work. Thanks for listening, and this has been the scientists on the LabZtorm Effect v.2, this series on the LabZtorm critique, and this was an audio podcast on coping the foundation of well-being, and it's been a collaborative a collaboration between the ZtormLabostix production and the Renal Patient Support Group. Thank you very much.